Welcome to the next video on sentence diagramming. This video is dedicated to diagramming what are called subordinate conjunctions and creating adverbial clauses. If you remember from the previous video, we learned about how to diagram coordinating conjunctions. When something coordinates, it works with the other element, right? So there's a balance. Remember, in the previous videos, I talked about thinking of the coordinating conjunctions as equal signs. The balance is, the scale is balanced. But with a subordinate conjunction, there is an imbalance. One of the clauses is dependent upon the other. It becomes what's called a subordinate clause. How do you know which one of those clauses is subordinate? Well, it's the one that starts with a subordinating conjunction. Okay? Now, the coordinating conjunctions we learned with the acronym fanboys. We have another acronym for subordinating conjunctions. It's just not as convenient to remember because it's not a real word. It's a WUBIS. Okay? A WUBIS, 3 A's, 2 W's, 2 B's. Okay? What do they stand for? Although, as, after, when, while, until, because, before, if, and since. If you can remember those AWUBIS words, you'll remember the subordinating conjunctions. And essentially what they do is tip the balance of the sentence. They'll take the clause that they start and make that an adverbial clause. It'll be dependent upon the other clause. Okay? Now, why do we say it's adverbial? Well, because they answer one of the 4 adverbial questions. Remember, adverbs answer the question how something was done, when, where, or why. Those are the 4 adverbial questions. And you'll see that when these AWUBIS words are placed in front of a clause, the entire clause answers one of those 4 questions about the independent one. So it's acting like an adverb. Perfect example, he whistled while he walked. While is our AWUBIS word. Notice it's bolded. It's in front of he walked. So now that entire underlined clause is a dependent clause. It's dependent upon the first clause. Okay? Now, ask yourself, what question is it answering? It's answering when he whistled. And when, we said, was an adverbial question. So that entire clause is modifying whistled. Okay, because it answers that adverbial question. Now, how do we diagram these? Let's take a look at our second example. My mom smiled when I made dinner. Well, when's our AWUBIS word? So that makes when I made dinner my subordinate clause, right? So it's answering the question when or why your mom smiled. Both are adverbial clauses, or excuse me, adverbial questions. So we know it's acting like an adverb. So we always diagram the independent clause first, the one that doesn't start with the AWUBIS word. And that makes sense because remember that clause, that one we just underlined, when I made dinner, that is acting like an adverb. So it's going to go under the verb in the independent clause. So we diagram the first one, my mom smiled, like this, subject, verb, mom smiled. And then we take a dotted line and we connect from the verb to the other clause, the dependent clause. And we put the AWUBIS word, that subordinate conjunction, on that dotted line. Just like we put the coordinating conjunctions on the dotted lines, the subordinate conjunction, when, goes on a dotted line off of the verb. And then we simply diagram the other clause underneath the way we would diagram it as if it was its own independent clause. I is my subject. What did I do? I made. What did I make? I made dinner. That's a direct object. Okay? So that's how we diagram these. Let's take a look at some examples. First, before we move on to the examples, I should point out that both 1 and 2 show that the subordinate clause is second. that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes that subordinate clause will be introductory, meaning it'll start with the awubis word, okay? I can say, for example, while he walked, comma, he whistled. Don't be confused by that. If you see a clause with an awubis word first, it's still the dependent clause. It's just being used as an introductory clause. That's why the comma is there. And you would diagram the independent one first. Okay? You'll see that in some of our examples. Let's move on. Our first example, if the weather is nice, I will be happy. Okay? Now, I just got done saying, sometimes you'll see an awubis word starting a sentence, and you'll see a comma here. That means it's introductory. If is one of our awubis words, right? It's the I in awubis. So, we diagram this clause first because this is our independent clause. Okay? So, I, what about I? Well, we've got a helping verb, will. We've got a main verb, be. Now that's a state of being. So we've got a complement, happy. Now, what does this entire subordinate clause answer about the first? Remember, it's going to be an adverbial question. It answers how you will be happy if the weather is nice. So that's why it comes off of the verb, acting like an adverb. If is our awubis word, our subordinate conjunction, and now we just diagram. Weather, firewall, okay, is our verb, nice is a complement, okay, and the answers a question, what weather? You can see why it's helpful to cross things off to make sure that you use them all. Okay, let's put a comma after nice because it was in the sentence. Period at the end of happy. Let's move on to the next example. Whenever my dog barks, my cat meows. Again, we've got a comma and our sentence is starting with one of the awubis words. So we know that we're diagramming this one first. Cat. What does the cat do? It meows. My answers the question, who's cat? So it's adjectival. Let's cross those out. And now we have whenever my dog barks. So we'll diagram that. Dog. What does he do? He barks. Comma. Whose dog? My dog. And now we just link from verb to verb with the awubis word. Okay? Makes sense? Let's move on to the next one. I ran until my legs hurt. Notice there's no comma. Why? Because the second clause is the one that starts with the awubis word. So we diagram the independent one first. What did I do? I ran. Underneath, legs. What did they do? They hurt. Whose legs? Mine. And now we just link them verb to verb. Remember, this whole clause underneath is acting like an adverb, answering the question, when you ran until your legs hurt. Okay? One more. I won the race because I practiced. What's your awubis word? Because. It comes in the second clause, so this one's subordinate. We'll diagram the first one. What did I do? I won. What did you win, since that's an action? Well, there's something being won, the race, so that's a direct object. Okay. What does because I practiced answer? It answers an adverbial question. It always will because it starts with a wubis word. Okay, subordinate conjunction. It answers the question why or how you won. Okay? Why did you win the race? Because I practiced. How did you win the race? Because I practiced. Either way, they're both adverbial. I practiced, period. And we go from verb to verb, and we write our wubis word, the subordinate conjunction, on the dotted line. This is how we diagram adverbial clauses. Remember, they will start with one of these awubis words, which are subordinate conjunctions. They create what are called complex sentences. The reason we say that is we have an independent clause. This is our independent one. And we have a dependent clause. And it is that awubis word that makes that clause dependent upon the other. Okay? Thanks for watching.